Welcome to the Note Investor Podcast. We'll guide you through the ups and downs of note investing and teach you all about the nitty-gritty details of the business that other people won't talk about. Your host, Dan Deppen, is a former aerospace engineer and product manager who transitioned away from cubicle life to full-time note investing in 2018. Our website is www.fusionnotes.com, where you can subscribe to this podcast, comment, and find links to other information on note investing.
All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Note Investor Podcast, and joined today by Dave Putz. Dave, how you doing?
Doing well, man. How are you?
Good, good. So I know you've got a lot of experience in the industry, and we're actually one of the first people I met in the note industry. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and what you've been up to?
Sure. I was in rentals back probably 06 or 07, right at the height of the market, and just got into a bad situation with some landlord situations. And I needed something different, needed change. A very popular friend in the space got me into notes in 2010. He started a small fund at that time. He brought me on to just do valuations. And at that time, we were looking at a couple thousand assets at one time. And all I did is evaluate them and decided what the value was, how, what kind of market it was in, if there's bars in the windows or not. And then we went ahead and processed the asset list. He went ahead and did due diligence on it and bought it in the fund. I did that for about 2 years, 2010, 2012-ish. And then I went on my own and started buying privately, buying notes slowly, small and surely, and just build up over years. So then in 2015, I started my company. When I was buying privately, started the company up and started buying through the company, started doing some JV work, and then got into a situation where we had enough funds to do it privately. So our company's now a private equity fund. We have capital. We buy, we sell, of course, a ton of assets. And we've met amazing people in the space, I'm sure, like yourself, and really enjoyed the ride over the years and learned some really, really good lessons and made some good profits as well. So,
yeah, what was it like looking at assets back in 2010? Had a lot of them hit the market yet, or was that almost?
It was a lot of assets. I mean, our tapes nowadays are, if 100 is big, it was a couple thousand. So you would go through, 1,000, 2,000 assets, and you would try being the first because there were so many to buy. The crazy part back then is that they're priced at 35 cents. And before I knew it, I couldn't understand why we'd buy almost anything as long as no bars in the windows for anything. And not knowing valuations back then, I was surprised we're buying these kind of assets. What I found was that even if I was 50% wrong back then on value, at 35 cents, you couldn't go wrong. Well, it was fun back then. I didn't realize it. I wish I appreciate it now, but we wouldn't buy about 40 cents on a dollar back then, even equity deals and whatnot. And there was a lot of assets, just tons.
Yeah. Were you buying those? Was this directly from banks, or was that from hedge funds, or?
We bought a lot from Granite back when Granite was popular. We bought a lot from it was a lot of the hedge funds that are still around today. We were buying from back then, Penny Mac and whatnot. We were buying some from Dream Builders, Condor at times, but I think ultimately we're buying a lot from Granite, to be honest with you. So, but the pool was so much bigger. And there wasn't as many investors back then as there was today.
Right.
But we'd buy a pool and we'd be at 36 cents on a dollar. And things were just cheap. It was great. It was fun. I wish I had my money in it.
Unfortunately, I missed that part of the market. So
yeah. Today we talk about, what percentage of value and whatnot, and we stuck at 35 cents. And I'm sure I talked about stair stepping.
Mm-hmm.
Back then it was easy to do. Today it's not as easy to use a stair-step method to bid on anything because the numbers don't work out as they did back then.
Yeah, and the stair-step method, for those who haven't heard about it, it's basically a rule of thumb that says based on the BPO value of the property, assuming there's no equity, you'll bid a certain percentage of BPO, and then that percentage kind of increases the higher the value. And it was good. It's kind of good for beginners because it'll keep people out of trouble. Like you said, like if you're buying at 35% and you're off by, 50% on the value, you can still come out okay. The big problem with it nowadays is if you bid at that and you get accepted, it'll keep you out of trouble, but you're never going to get accepted.
Yeah.
You're never going to get any bids accepted, really. So
today, if you increase that stair step up to 50, 55, 60, and you use that method to buy, you miss a lot of the factors. At 35 cents, 40 cents, we were at back then, that stair step method was a real quick calculation, and expenses would never kill you. If you're buying at 60 cents on an equity deal nowadays, it could really kill you. Or if it's a really underwater asset, the stair step method worked great when it really wasn't that big of a deal. Now, I'm sure we talked before about this, that we don't bid based on percentage of anything. It's what we call byproduct of our bid. We bid based on the return. Someone say, hey, what are you buying at? I can buy at 90% of value or UPB for 20%. It's a byproduct of what my bid is. It's not driving my bid. I shoot for a return and run through a calculator to figure out. And if it's 20%, if it's 40%, if it's 80%, to me, it doesn't matter anymore, because at the end of the day, you don't put your percentage of BPO in your bank, you put your return in the bank.
Yeah, and I think the challenge for a lot of folks, especially when they're starting out, is the rules of thumb are nice because they don't necessarily have the time or know how to build a fancier spreadsheet to take into account all those factors, or they don't even know what factors need to be included.
And we've been asked a million times, I'm sure you as well, is that, can you help me build a calculator? And that's difficult because every person's situation is different. The returns are different. The JV partners, if they're using them still, are different. Their capital limit's different. There's a lot of factors that go into a calculator that I can give to you, but unless you build it yourself and understand how it works, it's hard to use it and adjust it, right? But I also think that unknowing what your goals are and you don't know as a beginner, that becomes problematic.
Mm-hmm.
It just does.
Yeah, because I know I've always been surprised on things in deals, especially like contract for deeds, where you get hit with like random water bills and other things that you're never going to have in a model.
Yeah, absolutely. Model's there for a reason. We try being conservative with our model. We'll inflate here and there just to be careful. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know when a letter's going to hit or a BK situation is going to happen. You have to file a $1,000 claim. You don't know those kind of things. So you want to inflate a little bit to a point, but it's real hard to be exact because you can't predict the future. And I've heard a lot of people say, listen, why don't you go through an exit strategy and go for that X strategy? Well, it's not up to me to determine what the X strategy is. It's up to the borrower. If I want to modify and I can't get a hold of them, there's nothing I can do with that.
Right.
It's tough.
Yeah, absolutely. You built some pretty fancy tools to do some of this. I know I've seen some of them. So you maybe talk a little bit about that. So
Sure. Yeah, I'm big on automation. I make the joke, if I could automate taking the garbage out, I would. I'm just big on not doing the same task over and over again. There's some tasks that you have to be able to do. BPOs and valuations and phone calls can never be automated. What can be automated is the process of getting what the bedrooms and bathrooms and square footage and the annual tax amount and data points can always be automated. Those kind of things, just go to the internet and grab. You go to the internet and grab. We've all gone to Zillow and grabbed a Zillow estimate and put it on our spreadsheet. Well, if you do it over and over again, you can automate that. So we created a ton of automations, from bulk emails to gathering data to getting REO agents, and automate that process to the point where we can do it. We then made the step to automating emailing out investors who are local to a market and assets. So we don't trust BPOs as much as most people do. From the fund level, 35% of BPOs were completely wrong. So my best strategy was to reach out to friendly note investors and ask them, hey, listen, can you tell me about your local market? Is this house what we feel the value is or whatnot? We need the next step up and build a calculator, right? So we can in 2014, I built the process of taking my calculator and automating it through multiple assets and run them through the calculator. We've talked to other investors who manually do that, where they plug and play every asset into the calculator and it spits out something. I can literally run through 50 assets in minutes and shoot out a bid number based on the return of the exit strategy, depending on the exit strategy it falls into, and the return I want for the exit strategy, calculate a bid number that I can go ahead and quickly give out to a seller within minutes. It's great. I think automation in that facet is awesome. It's just what you do over and over again. If you're doing it over 2 times, you can more likely automate that process, because there's no reason to email 50 people individually anymore. Use MailChimp or whatever. So automation became something that I use a lot for time, but also efficiency, because errors can be made quickly, and that's the scary part.
Yeah, that is, especially as the margins get tighter, where there's less, room for error in that. But no,
Yeah,
I
I
agree.
think that most people, they drop their returns, right? Oh, I'm not getting assets one. Well, don't drop your returns to the point you don't like it. We talked about reinstatement being a big concern. A lot of people don't even factor in, like taxes for the year. When you have a situation where the borrower can reinstate and that coupon rate's at 3%, if they reinstate and they only put down $3,000 or $4,000, your return could be 5%. So you need to factor that in. And those are the kind of things that some people miss in their calculator if they do build one. It's like, well, what happened? They reinstate, and their reinstatement amount is 1.5 years behind. They put down $3,000. They're back to the original coupon rate, and you can't modify that. So
yeah, you can't modify it up. That would be kind of hard to do.
Yeah. I wish, if they can, if you're in a situation where they can't reinstate, you offer the modification. If they choose not to take it, that's on them. But if they reinstate, there is no modification to be had. They're back to square one. Your returns, your purchase price minus the reinstatement amount, and that's it. So I think people got to truly look at that when they're bidding on stuff.
Yeah, I don't want to be in a position where if they reinstate, I'm unhappy.
Exactly.
Kind of.
So we built a calculator. Say again?
Well, no, I was going to say, because usually I always like to be able to reinstate if possible, because I find when I end up taking the property back, the variability in the returns goes through the roof. That's where, to your point of, you don't know exactly what's going to happen. There's a lot of uncertainty in the cost. You can't really model everything ahead of time. That variance shoots through the roof when you start doing foreclosures and even deed and liens and stuff like that.
Yeah, you piss off the borrowers. You get into a house you may not want. We don't buy anything under $50,000 because one kitchen repair can kill a deal. One bathroom model, one roof can kill a deal at that price range. But you're right. It's when you take that asset back, a lot of your variables open up. You don't know what's behind that door. We try getting property preservation reports when we buy an asset. I always ask sellers for that, because I want to see what happened. What do they know about the property that I may or may not know? And property preservation pictures are amazing to see. It's awesome insight. And looking through the servicing notes to see what's in there. If there's something not presenting to me, I'm asking for it. But I think that's some of the things that the beginners don't realize they can ask for it. Always ask for servicing notes. It tells you what's going on with the deal, and make that part of your due diligence.
Yeah, there's some gems in there. I mean, it's interesting. Like, I've read some in the call notes where you can understand why the borrower hiccuped and why it's okay. And I feel a lot better about it. And then I've seen other things in the call notes where the borrower called in and said, well, the AC broke, the heater broke, and it needs a roof, and I don't like this. And sometimes they'll list like things that are wrong.
Yeah. It tells you everything wrong with the property. Or, hey, listen, this, and you're saying, whoa. They're arguing with the servicer, and that's a sign of something I may not want to get into, or I'm going to price it accordingly to make sure if I'm buying a problematic situation, my returns are, adjusted to deal with that risk level.
Right.
That's, again, what we're coming out with soon is a calculator that other people can use, and we always target our worst case scenario Because if you perform and modification happens, that's a better situation. I don't want to calculate the easy, quick, best scenario. I want to know what my worst case is. So I don't want to bid hoping something may happen. I want to bid that knowing that if all goes wrong, I'm still in an okay position. I don't bid performers based on truly only yield. I run it through the model, and it says if I have to foreclose on this thing, even if it's performing, what is my situation like? Because if I buy it performing and it's a great yielder, but if I have to foreclose 3 months later and I'm in a bad spot, well, I don't get to buy that. Even at a 15 yield, it just doesn't make sense. So everything that's run through that calculator to automate that so I get away from the emotional side of it. But we can quickly calculate yield. I mean, you've done some great videos on the ROI versus yield, and we can quickly do that. But there's more to it than just that yield number.
Right. Yeah. If you don't have any equity in it, or there's a difference between a high yield with one of the things I always like to look at on performers is what happens if this goes sideways? How can I recover?
Yep.
Yeah. If it means you're going to take a beating, then I need a way, way, way higher yield.
Yeah. A lot of people look at equity and they say, what's wrong with equity? Well, if you go to auction, you can't sell it for equity. You can't get that equity out if it sells at the auction. If it sells third party, you're only getting legal balance. And if you're calculating that you're taking the auction, you're going to take it back as a REO and you're excited, someone can outbid you at the auction and all you're getting back is what your balance is. If you want to put more money in it, it's fine. But that's another one of our exit strategies that we're building out that allows users to figure out, make sure that if it goes to auction, what return, and it sells third party, what return do you need to make you happy? And that's a great situation where we've argued with hedge funds. Well, why you bid so low on this? Well, if you take it back, it's a great equity situation. Yeah, but what if I can't take it back? What if someone else outbids me at the auction? Well, how often does that happen? It doesn't matter how often, right? If you're buying 100 of them, it's not a big deal. But if you're buying a pool of 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 of them, and 3 of them go sideways, you can really lose your shirt. Versus a hedge fund who might buy 1,000 at a time.
Yeah. Yeah, life would be a lot easier if I could buy 1,000 at a time. It also opens up doors with sellers. As I've started to look at, buying some what are really smaller pools, but of, several $100,000 versus onesies, twosies, there are a lot more people who will sell to you the more that you can buy. So.
Yeah, and we talked to a lot of new investors. I'm sure you as well. And they want to know how to get in. And my always advice to these new people is that learn these kind of things, but do some kind of bartering. Give me a skill that you have that I don't have, and get into it that way. We see a lot of these brokering situations where people pass the tape along. I encourage people to be careful with that. Passing the tape along doesn't add value. And more likely, we've seen it. And I don't know if you actually know the seller. So that's, take the asset, understand how to calculate the risk level, and then send it to me as an asset. If you can find an asset I haven't seen before and you calculate all out and you understand all those parts, I'll work with you. But I think beginners just need to know more of the functionality, and the best way of doing that is to barter your time or your experience or your knowledge. If you're great at spreadsheets and I don't have time to do it, wonderful. If you're great at marketing, if you're great at content, broker that for experience and knowledge, because for me to get on the phone with somebody or yourself, I need to get something in return and not just share my experience and knowledge with you. That just doesn't work for me. So,
Well, and you do have some tools out right now that people can use. You might talk a little bit about your pricing tool that you were showing me. So there's a lot of functionality in there.
Sure. Yeah. So what we're coming out with is a full calculator that actually takes an input spreadsheet tape, we call it, and runs through any asset that you choose to want to evaluate. And what you're going to set is your variables. So what return do you want if you foreclose, rehab, sell? What rehab is your estimate rehab? And what are all your scenarios of returns? So what was going to happen is that you're going to say, I want to evaluate this one, this one, this one. Okay, and you go ahead through the process, and you're going to actually run through every asset based on your projected returns, your expenses, if you're going to run a BPO, what your servicing costs are, because we all use different servicers, and it'll evaluate that based on your numbers and allow you to, in turn, get a bid number based on our mathematical formulas and give a bid number that will actually give you the worst case scenario bid, so that you can go ahead and quickly, efficiently, and reduce errors, come up with a bid number within minutes. I think that those kind of factors are amazing. And using the experience and spreadsheets you've seen, our bid calculator is very similar. There's a lot into that. And for a newbie to understand the mathematic part of it is sometimes overwhelming.
Yeah, I noticed a lot of people kind of get stuck. But that's pretty cool that people can use that, because pricing is like this, I don't know, it's like this, like the most dark and mysterious part of note investing. Like even like, very expensive training courses and things will not include any real like bid calculators or anything like that. So it's kind of a rare thing to be able to get.
Absolutely, and we added into it. I'm sure you've seen in our Facebook group. We have a bunch of resources from servicer fee schedules to what states are involved with, to agents, to attorneys, and so what our calculators can actually include are those resources that people have shared with us.
And what's the name of the Facebook group? Because you got one of the bigger note investing Facebook groups out there, but I know the name is kind of long and it's a mouthful. And I can
yeah, so it actually came from a local meetup we had here in Jersey a few years ago, and we started as a small thing and it blew up. East Coast Distressed Note Investing, Jersey style, I think it's nicknamed. And I've thought of it changing over the years, but people just knew it and recognized it, so we didn't change it. But it started back in 2014. It's just a place where I didn't find Facebook have a group for note investors, so I started for that facet. And I think what we do differently than a lot of groups is it's not about me, it's about everyone kind of sharing knowledge. I'm not looking to make it only about certain people, so we always encourage people to not bulletin board post it, but just share information, share knowledge, ask questions. And we have no problem with people advertising it as long as they're adding content. But what we did then was we created a spreadsheet of all kinds of different things, including a group directory. So if you want to meet someone in your local market, go check a look at the group directory and see if there is somebody there. Or better yet, if you have an asset in a certain city, go check the group directory and find out to the note investor local to it and reach out to them. We have a bunch of resources there. There's a Google spreadsheet. We're big Google people. I know you're more Excel, but we use a lot of Google Sheets to assist people to go to different links and whatnot. And we talked about having an Excel versus Google Sheet competition because I think you just have to find your niche. But our spreadsheet allows people to utilize all the resources we made available from our asset list. We have over 140 assets right now currently available. They can go get that list from our spreadsheet. Once you sign in.
That's a good point too, because that's the other thing people are always looking for is where to go buy assets. Yeah. And so I don't want that to get missed by folks, because people list assets on there, so that's a good place to go to
list as well as buy.
What's that?
Yeah, you can buy assets or list assets there, right? We do share that we're getting big on sharing content and blending with investors. Yeah, absolutely. If you're looking to buy or if you have an asset to sell, we do charge a small, very small fee just to list it. I think what people get overwhelmed with is seeing this kind of quantity of assets. And if you have questions, just reach out to us and ask. We're open, honest with everything. You just have to sign NDA, and then we give you access to that list that's available to anyone. We love to add new investors on there for buyers as sellers. So, yeah, if you look to buy or sell, feel free to reach out to us.
Yeah, it's a really good Facebook group. I mean, that's where I post a lot of my stuff between, yours and then Chris 70's are kind of the two where I put the most stuff. People have asked me if I'm going to create my own, but honestly, there's just kind of enough out there. I don't know if we need another.
Yeah, it gets splits up, right?
Kind of hang out on the ones that already exist.
It's tough because the groups are splitting up, and you lose that, the facet of where to go. And if you have too many groups, I always felt that people start splitting up, and you lose attention from different people, right? The new group may have lost, they may post something the other group doesn't see because they just didn't check it out. So, right. I agree. I think that starting another group is just difficult. And I encourage people, listen, I think all the groups are amazing. I think they're great content, and a lot of stuff is free out there. But there are certain knowledge you need to reach out to other investors and either pay or to consult with them, like yourself, and say, listen, Dan, how do I do this? But yeah, the groups are great for content, small content stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I want to make sure we stress on the fact that new investors who get nervous, and what we encourage people to do is to talk to Dan, talk to people, and just reach out to them. We have a lot of new investors feel like they're lost, and I was there. We were both there. It's can be difficult.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very opaque, kind of challenging industry with a lot of nuance, and you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And it's very easy to get overwhelmed. Like I know for me, a couple times early on, I kind of hit a point where I'm like, oh, is this really worth it or not? And then I plowed through, but I think a lot of people get stuck. So like a lot of those tools you provide, like being able to, place to go to buy notes, or, some of the ROI calculator stuff really makes it a lot easier for people to kind of get unstuck. And yeah, because it's a really cool market. Once you crack the code on it, it's very worthwhile. But yeah, it does take a little bit to get there. It's not quite as, dirt simple as some of the, gurus will tell you, or some of like the bigger pockets posts like, oh, this is great. You just buy a piece of paper and you don't have tenants to worry about, and it's easy street. It's not quite that simple, but it's definitely worthwhile.
We've bought a lot of assets from individuals who've just jumped in because that's what we're encouraged to do. Just go out and buy. We bought a lot of assets from those people who just bought, who didn't know what they're getting involved with, and they were scary about it.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I haven't run across too many of those people. What I run across are the people when I'm selling, they get scared and they just don't follow through at that point because they're worried about messing something up.
Yeah. So to wrap up what's going on, I think, definitely take a look at our East Coast group. Stay plugged into our calculator that we're coming out with. I think that, stay tuned into all the groups we have. We have a Facebook page as well for our business. But, reach out to us and talk to us and see what's going on. We have a lot of automation tools we don't share with a lot of people. I can pull REO agents. I can pull, we have a whole scraper that we can scrape data from. But there's a lot of things that we just don't share because it could overwhelm people. I'm looking forward to being able to share things like that. But there's some nuances that we just can't add to it.
Well, you don't want to tee people up to get lost in the details. Like I've talked to some folks as well who just enjoy kind of the minutia of the stuff they're diving into, but doesn't necessarily lead to them getting a deal. So you don't want to get stuck that way. One question I had too, do you have any ways to pull delinquent taxes? For me, that's one of my bugaboos, because I like to look at that before I bid. But for me, it's been largely just a manual process. I guess there are some services and things you can do, but they get kind of pricey if you're not necessarily going to pay, what is it, Black Knight, or there's some other folks out there for a whole tape, unless I know I already have them. So
what we encourage people is to, when they make an offer, don't be scared when they make their initial offer, because everything's subjected to the, due diligence period. So get your offer out there and make it contingent on a bunch of points, O&Es, all those kind of things. But to pull automated situations, we're looking at a few APIs. We're manually doing it through a process of using some VAs and some technology to do that. But we're actually talking to some API people to create that a little bit quicker, a little bit easier, and some sources that we're using. We're just not there yet to share. But once we do, we're actually incorporated with our calculator that we can hit a button and grab delinquent, grab taxes, grab all this stuff. So it reduces people's need to manually go capture that. But again, it's amazing what that technology can do. But I would encourage people not to get stuck on, hey, I don't know what the angle, what the back taxes are when I put my bid in. Just make it a part of your contingency plan on your due diligence part of it, and tell the seller, hey, part of my bid is the fact that I'm going to pull an O&E, and if there's back taxes, my bid's going to be reduced based on that. Be open and honest with sellers, and more likely they'll be like, that's fine. Unlike typical real estate where you have to have everything up front, the due diligence notes is so much broader, where you put a bid in and it's subject to everything, from O&E to BPO to everything. We have a 13 list of what we asked the seller for, 13 different items.
Nice. Dave, thanks so much. I definitely want to have you on some more, and we need to get into, we didn't really get into it this time, but the using Google versus using Excel. Because
I would enjoy it. That'd be great.
all right, awesome. All right, well, thanks again. That's a wrap for today, everybody. I'll talk to you next time.